The apartment smelled like coffee and old textbooks when I first walked through the door with my duffel bag slung over one shoulder. It was a typical college rental, scuffed hardwood floors, mismatched furniture that had clearly been collected from various yard sales, and windows that overlooked the busy street below. But it was affordable, close to campus, and most importantly, it was available immediately. I needed that last part more than anything. You must be Adrian. I turned toward the voice and felt my breath catch in my throat. Standing in the doorway to what I assumed was his bedroom was possibly the most attractive man I'd ever seen in person. Tall, maybe 6 foot, 2 with dark hair that fell slightly into his eyes, a jawline that could cut glass, and the kind of casual confidence that came from someone who'd never had to question their place in the world. This was Ethan Monroe, my new roommate. That's me, I managed, hoping my voice sounded steadier than I felt. Thanks again for responding to my ad so quickly. I really needed to find a place. Ethan smiled, and I noticed the way it crinkled the corners of his hazel eyes. No problem. My last roommate moved out pretty suddenly, so the timing worked out. Let me show you your room. As I followed him down the short hallway, I tried not to notice the way his shoulders moved beneath his fitted t-shirt, or how his jeans hung perfectly on his frame. I'd promised myself when I transferred to this university that I'd focus on my studies, keep my head down, and avoid any complications. Getting a crush on my straight roommate definitely qualified as a complication. My room was small, but had good natural light and came semi-furnished with a bed, desk, and dresser. It was more than enough. So, what are you studying? Ethan asked, leaning against the doorframe as I set my bag down. English literature with a minor in creative writing, I replied. I'm a transfer student junior year. You, business administration, senior year? I know it's boring compared to lit and writing, he grinned. But someone's got to keep the world's businesses running, right? Over the next hour, we worked out the basics of living together, splitting utilities, sharing the common spaces, quiet hours during finals. Ethan was easy to talk to, with a quick sense of humor that made me laugh despite my nervousness about the new living situation. By the time he left to meet some friends for dinner, I felt cautiously optimistic about the arrangement. What I didn't feel optimistic about was my growing awareness that Ethan was going to be a daily test of my self-control. The first few weeks passed in a comfortable rhythm. I'd wake up early, make coffee, and usually find Ethan already at the kitchen table with his laptop, working through spreadsheets or business case studies. We'd chat briefly about our days ahead, then go our separate ways to classes. Evenings were different. That's when we actually got to know each other. I learned that Ethan was from a small town in Montana, the oldest of 3 siblings, and that he'd come to this university on a partial academic scholarship. He worked part-time at a local gym to cover his expenses and had dreams of starting his own consulting firm someday. He was driven, ambitious, and surprisingly thoughtful when he talked about his future. I shared my own story growing up in Portland, discovering my love of literature in high school. The difficult decision to transfer schools after my previous university didn't feel like the right fit. I carefully edited out the part about leaving because I'd fallen for my best friend who didn't feel the same way. That wound was still too fresh. What surprised me most was how easy it was to be around Ethan. Despite my initial attraction, I found myself relaxing into a genuine friendship. He never made assumptions about my sexuality. I'd been casually out since freshman year and treated me with the same casual friendliness he showed everyone until the night everything started to change. It was a Thursday evening in late October when the first crack appeared in our comfortable roommate dynamic. I was sprawled on the couch, surrounded by books and highlighters, working on an essay about romantic poetry for my Victorian literature class. The assignment was kicking my ass. I'd been staring at the same Blake passage for 20 minutes without absorbing a single word. Ethan emerged from his room looking frustrated, his hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. "How's it going?" I asked, grateful for the distraction. "Terrible." He dropped onto the couch beside me with a heavy sigh. "I have this business statistics exam tomorrow, and nothing is sticking." I swear, every time I think I understand probability distributions, it all falls apart in my head. Statistics was never my strong suit, I admitted. I barely passed it freshman year. Yeah, well, I need at least a B on this exam to keep my grade where it needs to be. He rubbed his eyes tiredly. I've been studying for 3 days straight, and I feel like I know less now than when I started. I looked at him with genuine sympathy. Ethan was usually so confident, so in control. Seeing him stressed like this stirred something protective in me. Want me to quiz you? I offered. Sometimes explaining things out loud helps it stick. His face brightened. Would you? That would actually be amazing. For the next hour, I read statistics problems from his textbook, while Ethan worked through them, explaining his reasoning as he went. Slowly, I could see his confidence returning. When he got one particularly complex problem right, he actually fist-pumped the air, and I couldn't help but laugh. See? You've got this, I encouraged. Thanks to you. I honestly don't know what I'd do without you, Adrian. You've been a lifesaver these past few weeks. Something in the way he said my name made my heart skip. I quickly looked back down at the textbook, reminding myself firmly that this was just friendship, nothing more. Happy to help, I said, keeping my voice light. That's what roommates are for. But when I glanced back up, I caught Ethan looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. It was gone in an instant, replaced by his usual easy smile. But it lingered in my mind for the rest of the night. November arrived with the first real cold snap of the season, and with it came an increasing closeness between Ethan and me that I both craved and feared. We fell into a new routine. Most evenings after dinner, we'd end up in the living room together, me working on essays or reading for class, Ethan grinding through his business coursework. Sometimes we'd study in comfortable silence. Other times, we'd take breaks to watch an episode of whatever show we were currently binging, or to debate everything from philosophy to the best pizza toppings. The physical distance between us on the couch gradually decreased. At first, we'd sit at opposite ends, then maybe a cushion apart. Eventually, we'd end up side by side, shoulders occasionally brushing, as we leaned over to show each other something on our laptops or phones. I told myself it didn't mean anything. Ethan was a naturally warm person, comfortable with casual touch in a way that I envied. When he'd clap me on the shoulder after I helped him with an assignment, or ruffle my hair in the morning when I was being particularly grumpy before coffee. It was just his way of showing friendship, but late at night. Lying in my bed and staring at the ceiling, I couldn't stop thinking about those moments of contact. The warmth of his hand on my shoulder, the brush of his fingers when we both reached for the popcorn bowl at the same time, the way he'd started sitting close enough that I could smell his collar something woodsy and clean that made my head spin. I was in trouble, and I knew it. The moment that changed everything happened on a Tuesday in mid-November. I was on the couch as usual, working on a comparative analysis of 2 contemporary poets for my modern poetry seminar. The assignment was due at midnight, and I was nowhere near finished. My laptop sat beside me, but I was taking notes by hand first, a habit from high school that I'd never broken. Ethan came home from the gym around 7. His duffel bag slung over one shoulder and his hair damped from a post-workout shower. He looked unfairly good in a simple fitted Henley and jeans. Still working? He asked, dropping his bag by the door. This essay is going to kill me, I groaned. I have 6 hours to finish it, and I'm not even through my outline. He grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge and came to sit beside me on the couch. What's it on? I explained the assignment, comparing the use of nature imagery in 2 different contemporary poets' work, analyzing how their differing backgrounds influence their perspective. Sounds complex, Ethan said. But you've got this. You're brilliant at this stuff. The compliment warmed me more than it should have. Thanks. I just need to focus and push through. Ethan was quiet for a moment, then stood up. Hold on, I have an idea, before I could ask what he meant. He sat back down on the couch and gently took my notebooks and textbook from my hands. What are you? Come here, he said softly, and then his hands were on my waist. Pulling me backward, my brain short-circuited as I suddenly found myself sitting on Ethan's lap, my back against his chest, his arms reaching around me to hand me back my materials. "There," he said, and I could feel his voice rumble through his chest against my spine. "Now you can focus on your work, and I can make sure you actually take breaks. You've been at this for hours." I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Every nerve ending in my body was acutely aware of everywhere our bodies touched his firm chest against my back, his thighs beneath me, his arms bracketing mane on either side as I held my notebook. "Ethan, what?" My voice came out embarrassingly breathless. "You're always hunching over when you work," he explained casually, as if this arrangement was completely normal. "This way you can sit up straight, and I can help keep you on track." Plus, I felt more than heard his low chuckle. "You're warm. It's freezing in here." He was right about that last part. Our landlord was notoriously stingy about heating. But that didn't explain why this was his solution, or why my heart was currently attempting to beat its way out of my chest. "Is this okay?" Ethan asked, and there was something uncertain in his voice now, like he was suddenly second-guessing himself. I should have said no. Should have made an excuse and moved back to my original spot. Should have maintained the boundaries that kept my feelings safely locked away. Instead, I heard myself say, "Yeah, it's okay." For the next 2 hours, I sat on Ethan's lap and somehow managed to work on my essay. It should have been impossible to concentrate. But something about his presence, solid and warm behind me, actually helped me focus. When I'd start to drift or get stuck on a particular section, he'd gently reach over and tap the notebook. "Keep going," he'd murmur. "You're doing great." He played with my hair absently while I worked, running his fingers through it in a way that was both distracting and oddly soothing. Once, when I stretched my arms above my head to work out a kink in my shoulders, his hand settled on my waist to steady me, and I swear I felt him pull me slightly closer. Maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I was reading into innocent gestures because I wanted so badly for them to mean something more. When I finally typed the last sentence of my essay and hit submit with 10 minutes to spare, I let out a huge breath of relief. "Done?" Ethan asked. "Done." I closed my laptop and let myself relax back against him for just a moment, too exhausted to maintain my guard. "Thank you. That actually helped." "Good." His arms came around my waist loosely, and I felt his chin rest on my shoulder. "You work too hard, you know that?" Says the guy who studies more than I do. That's different. I work hard because I have to. You work hard because you care too much. There was something tender in his voice. "It's one of the things I really admire about you, Adrian. You put your whole heart into everything." I didn't trust myself to respond. Not when we were this close, not when his breath was warm against my neck, not when every instinct I had was screaming at me to turn around and kiss him. Instead, I carefully extracted myself from his lap, immediately missing the warmth. "I should probably get some sleep," I said, not quite meeting his eyes. "Early class tomorrow, yeah. Yeah, of course." Was it my imagination, or did he sound disappointed? I gathered my things and headed toward my room, but paused at the doorway to look back. Ethan was still sitting on the couch, watching me with an expression I couldn't decipher. "Good night, Ethan. Good night, Adrian." I closed my door and leaned against it, my heart still racing. That night, sleep was a long time coming. After that night, something fundamental shifted between us. The casual touches became more frequent, more lingering. Ethan would find reasons to be close to me, reaching past me to grab something from a cabinet when he could have easily asked me to move, sitting close enough on the couch that our thighs pressed together, resting his hand on the small of my back when he passed behind me in the kitchen, and the lap-sitting thing. That became our new normal for study sessions. At least twice a week, Ethan would pull me onto his lap while we worked, claiming it helped him stay focused if he knew I was making progress too. I should have put a stop to it. Should have recognized it for the torture it was. But I was weak. I craved those moments of closeness, even knowing they probably meant nothing to him. But sometimes, just sometimes, I'd catch him looking at me with such intensity that I'd lose my train of thought completely. Or I'd feel his heart rate pick up when I shifted position on his lap. Or his hands would tighten on my waist in a way that felt possessive rather than casual. Was I imagining it? Was I seeing what I wanted to see? I didn't know, and I was too afraid to ask. The first Friday in December, Our mutual friends invited us to a party off campus. I almost didn't go. Social gatherings weren't really my scene, and the thought of watching Ethan flirt with girls all night, which is what usually happened at parties, made my stomach turn. But Ethan had been looking forward to it all week, and he'd specifically asked me to come with him. Come on, he'd pleaded that morning. You never go out. All you do is study and read. One night won't kill you. I go out, I protested weakly. Coffee shops and the campus library don't count. He grinned. Please, it'll be more fun if you're there. How was I supposed to say no to that? So there I was at 11 p.m., standing in a crowded living room with a beer I wasn't really drinking, watching Ethan across the room as he laughed at something one of his business school friends had said. He looked unfairly good in a dark button-up with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. And I wasn't the only one who'd noticed a pretty brunette had been making eyes at him for the past 20 minutes. I took a sip of my beer and told myself firmly that the sick feeling in my stomach was just the loud music and stuffy room, not jealousy. You okay? I turned to find Marcus, a guy from my contemporary fiction class, standing beside me. We'd worked on a group project together earlier in the semester and had stayed friendly. Yeah, fine, I lied. Just not really a party person. Me neither, honestly, Marcus smiled. Want to go get some air? There's a porch out back that's usually quieter. I glanced once more at Ethan. The brunette had moved closer to him now, her hand on his arm, and made a decision. Sure, that sounds good. The back porch was indeed quieter, and the cold December air felt good after the stuffiness inside. Marcus and I fell into easy conversation about classes, upcoming finals, our plans for winter break. He was nice, funny, smart, easy to talk to. Under different circumstances, I might have even been interested, but my mind kept drifting back to Ethan. Can I ask you something? Marcus said after a while. Sure. That guy you came with, Ethan, is there something between you two? I almost choked on my beer. What? No. Why would you think that? Marcus gave me a knowing look. Because you've been watching him all night like he hung the moon, and he's been shooting death glares at me for the past 5 minutes through the window. I turned to look, and sure enough, Ethan was standing just inside the glass door, staring at us with an expression that could only be described as thunderous. When our eyes met, he turned abruptly and disappeared back into the party. We're just roommates, I said weakly. Huh? Look, you seem like a great guy, Adrian, but I'm not trying to get in the middle of whatever that is. I think maybe you should go talk to him. He was right, but I was suddenly exhausted from the party, from my confused feelings, from the constant emotional whiplash of living with Ethan. You know what? I think I'm just going to head home. I found Ethan inside now, talking to a different group of people. The brunette was still hovering nearby, I said, touching his elbow to get his attention. I'm going to take off. His jaw tightened. With Marcus, what? No. Alone. I'm just tired. I'll come with you. You don't have to, I said. I'll come with you. His tone left no room for argument. The walk back to our apartment was silent and tense. I kept trying to figure out what I'd done wrong, why Ethan seemed almost angry. We'd barely made it through the door before he rounded on me. So Marcus seems nice, he said, and there was an edge to his voice I'd never heard before. Right. He is nice. We have a class together. Right, a class together. Is that why you two were all cozy on the porch? I stared at him in disbelief. We were just talking, Ethan. What's your problem? My problem? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. My problem is that I've been trying to... He cut himself off, running a hand through his hair in frustration. Forget it. No, don't do that. You've been acting weird all night. Just tell me what's wrong. What's wrong is that you're oblivious. The words burst out of him. What's wrong is that I've been basically throwing myself at you for weeks, and you don't even notice. Or maybe you do notice, and you just don't feel the same way. Which is fine. But then you come to a party and spend half the night with some guy. My brain had stopped processing somewhere around. Throwing myself at you. Wait, I interrupted. What are you saying? Ethan took a step closer, his eyes intense. I'm saying that I like you, Adrian. More than like you. I have for weeks now. Maybe longer. I thought the way you'd look at me sometimes. It's the way you never pulled away when I touched Y. I thought maybe you felt it too. but maybe I was wrong. Maybe I've been reading this whole thing wrong and you just see me as your straight roommate who's been making things weird. Couldn't speak. Couldn't move. My mind was reeling. Ethan, I finally managed. I thought you were straight. He let out a sharp laugh. Why would you think that? Because I don't know, you've never mentioned being interested in guys. You don't exactly set off my gaydar. And you never remain. In all the time we've lived together, you've never said anything. I've been trying to say something for weeks. He threw his hands up in exasperation. Why do you think I kept pulling you onto my lap? Why do you think I find every excuse to touch you, to be near you,